Is Cameron on?
Not sure.
Is Cameron on today, Paul? Can you see him in the Zoom?
You have to give me a minute.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Casey Good is not that one.
Okay. Okay.
Something wrong with it.
I tried to convert it.
Everything else works.
Okay.
That's
All right.
audio check.
I don't have any of the papers for doing the shout outs.
Audio check, please.
Check, 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 check.
Check, check.
Check.
Audio check, please.
Check, check.
Yep, can hear you.
Check, 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 check.
Audio check, please.
Check, check, check.
Check, check.
Just kind of banter for a second.
So, Chuck, are we going to do a good job, man? Because I really needed another hour.
What's that? Are we on right now?
You are live right now.
We are live. Do we have an intro on this one? Or are we just starting?
There's an intro.
Okay. So hard to see.
Your mics are hot. I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay.
Sure. What's your email?
For what?
Just so you can get it on there.
Oh, CMCKOW 91. You know that song? Stephen McKay 91.
Everyone can hear you.
In December 2018, after traveling for 2 years, 101 days, and over 1.2 billion miles, NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft arrived at its target, near-Earth asteroid Bennu. OSIRIS-REx is the first mission to explore this primitive remnant from the origins of the solar system, designed to study the asteroid and return a sample to Earth. Bennu is a dark, diminutive world, roughly the height of a skyscraper, and now the smallest body to be orbited by a spacecraft. Prior to arrival, it was known to have low thermal inertia, a characteristic of fine-grained materials like sand.
Okay.
An infrared spectrometer
I like
on
it. I like
OSIRIS-REx confirmed this property, leading scientists to expect a predominantly smooth surface.
You're taller than
But the
me.
first close-up views of Bennu delivered a major surprise. In exquisite detail, the mission's cameras revealed an unrelenting rockscape dominated by boulders. By combining these images from OSIRIS-REx with its laser altimetry data, we can take a tour of Bennu's remarkable terrain. The first stop is Simurgh Saxum. This prominent boulder defines the asteroid's prime meridian and serves as the basis of its coordinate system. In Persian mythology, the Simurgh is a large and benevolent bird and the possessor of all knowledge. Saxum is Latin for stone. To the northeast lies the largest boulder on Bennu. Measuring over 300 feet in length, Rock Saxum is a colossus longer than a football field. It is also rich in a type of iron oxide called magnetite, which was used by mariners as an early form of magnetic compass. In Arab folklore, the roc is an enormous bird of prey that can clasp elephants in its talons, as well as stranded sailors, like the hero Sinbad. Continuing northeast over the equatorial ridge, we arrive at Gargoyle Saxum. This striking boulder is among the darkest on Bennu, though it clutches a much brighter rock that is about the size of a person. In medieval legend, gargoyles are dragon-like, winged monsters that can breathe fire and that guard cathedrals from evil spirits. Our next destination takes us far to the east. At the northern end of a small crater lies Ocypete Saxum, a comparatively bright boulder measuring about 33 feet in diameter. Ocypete Saxum is located near one of 3 sites where Bennu ejected small particles into space in early 2019, displaying its dynamic and evolving nature. In Greek mythology, Ocypete is one of the 3 harpies, the half-maiden, half-bird personifications of storm winds, who would carry evil away from the earth. In the creation stories of ancient Egypt, the universe began as a formless, endless expanse of water. From this primordial sea arose the primordial mound, Benben. It was upon this rock that the god Atum settled in the form of the Bennu bird and sent forth the call that shaped creation. The story of Benben harkens to the mounds of fertile silt that once emerged from the receding floodwaters of the Nile, and it provides a fitting namesake for the tallest boulder on Bennu. Protruding by over 70 feet, Benben Saxum is so tall that it was first detected from Earth. Now, we can appreciate this monumental feature in detail using data from OSIRIS-REx. The final stop on our tour is a cluster of exceptionally bright boulders scattered across the southern hemisphere. They bear the spectral fingerprint of pyroxene, a mineral found in igneous rock that is unlikely to have formed on Bennu. These boulders most likely originated on the large asteroid Vesta and were delivered to Bennu's parent body through meteoroid impacts. Although it is small in size, asteroid Bennu has proved to be a fascinating world, abundant in geographic features that have defied our expectations. Thanks to OSIRIS-REx, we can now explore Bennu to uncover its composition, its evolution, and its ancient memories from the origins of the solar system.
Well, everybody, thank you for coming on to the 4th episode of Focus on Astrophotography. We have our special guest, Casey Good from Kitt National Observatory, and Guillermo Gonzales from Madrid, Spain. Both astrophotographers, very involved in it, and I believe deep sky astrophotography, but they'll let us know more as I get to know them myself. We had to have this program on early today because we are going to do site selection for the 2023 and 2024 eclipse. So we're flying out this afternoon down to San Antonio, and then we'll be heading out towards Hill Country out there to do the site selection. I also want to remind everybody that we have a special Global Star Party next Tuesday with Caitlin Ahrens as the special guest host, and she's from Goddard Space Flight Center. Also, Seth Shostak from SETI will be on, as well as many other scientists and PhD type candidate individuals who are doing research on the moon and Mars. So. I'm going to turn this over to Chuck and Ross here. Chuck and Ross, what's going to be all in our 4th episode?
Well, Scott, thank you so much. We're excited for episode 4 of Focus on Astrophotography. We're calling this one A Short History of a Long Journey. So we've got some fun stories we want to share with you, and we have two great, fantastic astrophotographers who are also just really great guys. And you know, I am just so impressed with all these intro videos we have. They are fascinating. And this one today just reminded me of the Hayabusa spacecraft from Japan that is going to be bringing back samples from another meteorite that they landed on and then keep going off into space. So there is so much happening and there is so much to follow and to look at. So we're really excited to be here. The two guys we have are Guillermo Gonzales from Madrid, Spain. Really awesome guy with great photos we're going to share for you. And then Casey Good, who, well, you'll see his photos. We only got two of them, Casey. Your second one, we weren't able to switch the file and convert it in time, but everybody can go check out Casey's photos at casey-good.com or good-astronomy.com. So guys, thanks so much for being on here. Guillermo, what time is it over there in Spain?
It's quarter past 8, so
okay, so it's almost time to start imaging.
Yeah, well, it's still light, but it seems that it's going to be a clear night, so probably after this I will set up the equipment, try to do something.
Okay, so do you have a target in mind?
But actually I don't. I will see how the moon is doing. I might be doing some moon if it's in the with the limits I have in my backyard. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I was doing last weekend the tri-fit, or I don't know how it's.
Oh yeah.
Tri-fit, and so I might still capture a little bit more with narrowband.
Very cool. Well,
that's actually the next one I'm going after myself. I just finished up on the Eagle Nebula, but yeah, that's my next target. I think we're about to get rain for like a week, so and then you gotta deal with the moon. So maybe next month I'll be able to capture
it. Yeah, it's I started when I was beginning astrophotography. I think 4 years ago. I did it, and I wanted to do it now. And with a new camera, I did it with a DSLR, and I'm doing it now with a cool camera. And I wanted to check the differences, and so it's just kind of a contrast approach.
What camera are you using?
I'm using 1600 from SWO. So I'm using that one, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I actually use that same sensor in the I think the QHY163. It's the same sensor I used to use that.
Well, yeah, and on my ATIC Horizon, I've got the same sensor as you too, Guillermo. And yeah, it's a great sensor. It's sensitive, and I think that's probably the most, at least up until this point right now, that's probably the most common astrophotography sensor. And our audience loves moon photos as well. But we're going to run through some of your pictures real quick, Guillermo. Can we see the first one? Oh, and let's see.
Can't see it.
Okay, that's not mine.
Guillermo.
That's that one. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's I composed it during the pandemics because during lockdown, I was bored of not being able to do any deep sky photography. So I composed it from last. I think it was 2019. I made the trunk with different filters and different approaches, and I had a lot of fun combining all of them. And then during the lockdown, I started playing, and I say, oh, it would be interesting, a kind of a different approach to have a sort of a pop art approach to astrophotography. So I was combining the colors for with narrow band. You have pretty a lot of flexibility. So that's why I put it that way. So
well, that was with your DSLR, correct?
No, I think this one was with 1600. It was one of the first images that I was doing with the 1600.
Well, it's a great
Um,
image.
So part of it was shot from the outskirts of Madrid, the narrow band parts, and the RGB were shot, and the luminance were shot from the 100 kilometers north of in Madrid, after the mountains. So where the sky is much better, and you can get deep sky. I mean, it's a good sky. So it was a lot of fun putting them together and having the whole vision put together and differences, and it's amazing how much contrast you get with the alpha H alpha compared to the others. Even if you're just taking a narrower band of the spectrum, it's amazing how much contrast you get. So
I love the H alpha.
I got that. You're shooting mono, right? Or are you shooting color?
I shot in mono. It's a mono. It's a mono.
Yeah. I just didn't know. I'm sorry. I know they make a color in it too, but are you shooting from inside a city, or like is your disguise dark? Or
it is a red zone. So where
Okay.
I'm located, it's not white zone. It's red zone. So and so I'm saying narrow band is fine.
Yeah, narrow band.
I think it was quite a long night. So it was. And for the color, I had to take the car and drive 100 kilometers at least. It's about 100 kilometers north.
Well, let's look at that second image. I know our audience loves the moon, and why don't you tell us how you got this mineral moon, those beautiful colors?
Yes, actually this is one of the first mineral moons that I was shooting. Now I'm having a different approach to them, to merging the colors. This was, as I'm saying, one of the first ones. So it was basically with, I think this was with 224 MC from SWO. And I just saturated and combined. And then what I used to do with in the previous approaches to these mineral moons was to do fake HDR. So I was decreasing the exposure and then normal exposure, and then increasing the exposure of the same shot and combining them all off in a high dynamic range image in order to highlight all the parts and highlight the differences in colors. So I'm using a different approach right now for the more color moons, which I think it gets a little bit more natural. But anyway, I like to how these color moons, the differences in the minerals are highlighted. Titanium-based Maria and iron-based Maria and all other elements get highlighted. I have lots of fun contrasting them with the NASA geologic maps of the moon, and seeing the differences and how the photo matches those maps. And that's very interesting as well.
Well, let's look at your last photo here.
Guillermo, are you using PixInsight? What are you doing? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing. How do you edit your photos? What software are you using?
For this photo, I mean, for Deep Sky, for sure, I'm using PixInsight. For the previous photo, I didn't use it. Although right now for moon photos, I'm using it for decreasing noise in them. I'm following a process with some multimedia and transformations in order to decrease the very, very minor grain or noise in the images, which I think it fits very good. I have it described it in my images in the last ones. I have a process. So I'm using PixInsight. I think it has plenty of opportunities. And this one that I'm showing, that has been shown now, the Pleiades with the dust clouds and so on, was developed with PixInsight, but not integrated with PixInsight for some reasons, which I don't know why. I had lots of problems integrating it. Actually, I gave it up because it was with my brother's Canon. This is with a DSLR, no modified, so normal DSLR. And I had problems integrating it. I gave it up. And after some months, I decided to give it another try. but with a APP, AstroPixel Processor, I think is the name of the program. And I could integrate it, and then it was just, it went sweet with PixInsight, and it turned out very, very nice. I'm happy with it.
Well, our next guest is going. I love PixInsight, and it's incredibly powerful. And our next guest is going to give us a little tutorial on a really awesome feature that I didn't even know about, and that will probably help you getting that dust out, Guillermo. So let's move on now to the incredible director of astrophotography at Kitt Peak, a guy who is controlling telescopes in the Atacama Desert, in the Northern Hemisphere, and producing, well, APOD photos. So the first photo we're going to show that Mr. Good has taken is an APOD, and hopefully he can tell us how we can maybe get a photo like that too. Do we got it on the screen? Okay. Casey, are you there?
I am here. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, tell us about this awesome photo.
Sure. So this is the Cave Nebula, also known as Sharpless 155, up in the northern constellation of Cepheus. Cepheus is probably one of my favorite constellations of the night sky because it's just full of dark nebulas, dark dusty areas that are highlighted with emission nebulas. This is a great target to shoot in narrowband as well. So you have a lot of different options with this particular target. But this is a really special image to me because it was my very first NASA APOD that I got about a year or two ago. And it was totally from a fluke. I hadn't submitted anything in a long, long time. So I just sent the editors an email, and this was when I was experimenting and trying to learn how to better incorporate hydrogen alpha into an LRGB image. And it just came out really nice. And I sent it to them, and within a couple of hours, I got an email back, said, "Hey, we love it. We're going to post it tomorrow. Here's a link for it." And, so happy. I had a little tear coming down my head.
That's awesome. I love the Cave Nebula. I mean, I think Cepheus is my favorite constellation too, as far as like deep sky objects. I'm actually about to talk to you in a little bit, but Casey, when you're doing, I just started, not just started, I've done a couple HA RGB images. Do you ever have problems when you're combining that HA to the RGB? Do you ever have problems with like blowout on any of the, like, I guess for like the Eagle Nebula, like I made this perfect, beautiful image, but like in the center, like that last pillar behind the actual, like the main pillar for the Eagle Nebula is like a little bit blown out. And I don't know. I just wonder if you ever come across that problem with adding HA data to an RGB data.
Yeah, actually, quite frequently, people typically have problems when they combine it for various reasons. But I think what you're specifically talking about is when you're stretching two images independently of each other, you have hydrogen alpha that's that beautiful gray scale that has so much detail that you really want that to come out in your RGB images. But when you are stretching them, the intensities between the two images are different. And so one of the things that you can do within PixInsight to change that is to extract the synthetic luminance from the RGB and then use linear fit to match them. That way the intensities are the same if you are having a hard time eyeballing it. That way when you combine, you wouldn't have that kind of highlight blowout issue that you had mentioned. Some people just eyeball it. Some people use that other little trick.
Yeah, there's a couple things I've been playing with. I haven't started doing PixInsight yet. I need to. Right now, I've just been doing Photoshop with a bunch of different plugins.
Yeah.
But one of the plugins you can synthesize the green channel in it. But I think I've experienced with the HDR feature, the high dynamic range feature in Photoshop. I think that's playing a big factor into it. But I've just noticed when I add that HA data, even if I'm not doing that, it tends to blow out certain areas. So I might send you an email later.
Yeah, feel free to.
Actually, Casey, we were talking, and we just want to kick it with you, man. You're our age, and gosh, we are so impressed.
Are any of those do you control any of the telescopes in Tucson? Are you able to do that?
Yeah, so up at the observatory at Kitt Peak, we have telescopes available for public outreach every day. We have 3 very, very nice telescopes And part of the astrophotography workshops that I teach, where we also teach Pix Insight from the beginning, if you guys are interested in learning. But one of the observatories, I can actually control everything from my phone, just using like TeamViewer or remote dial-in. And so when I have the camera set up on the Arcos telescope up there, I can literally just dial in from my phone and set it on an imaging run down here in Tucson. And it's actually how I have my remote observatory set up as well.
What's the what's the telescope and camera that y'all are using?
You've got some big ones, I've
Yeah.
seen. Yeah.
At Kitt Peak, we have two 16-inch Arcos telescopes and a 20-inch Arcos telescope that we use for public outreach. And then each one has a refractor piggybacked on the back. One of them is a Takahashi FSQ 106, and the other one is a TEC 140. And so I actually tend to bring my personal cameras up because I have some newer CMOS cameras. Like I had the 1600 you guys mentioned. My new favorite is the 2600 mono APS-C
So
chip.
good. So good.
Yeah, I love that one. And then I also have like an ASI 294 that I use on the refractors because it has that dual binning mode that allows you to either have really, really small pixels for the refractors or larger pixels for the reflectors. And so I kind of vary it. I'm a little bit of a gear addict myself, so I have a new camera every 6 months, it seems like, that I'm taking up there. But yeah, those are what we use up at the observatory.
Yeah, man, I had a big problem with buying gear. Like, if you go look at my cloudy nights when COVID hit, I wanted to get, so when COVID hit, I was going to get the ED 127, the FCD 100 glass, which I got, but my wife was like, no, you're going to sell some of this stuff if you want that telescope. So yeah, it got pretty ridiculous, but I'm about to get the 2600 and I'm about to start shooting mono for the first time. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
It and that 294 is a really good camera.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
my
do
main
love that
camera.
feature you're talking about. And some people do some really good work. And the guy I'm going to do a shout out to later uses that camera as well to compete with the photos that Dr. Arp took with the Palomar 200-inch. But that's just a little tease. Casey, let's look at your third photo since we can't get your second one, unfortunately. But this one I'm so excited to share with the audience because we haven't had many Galaxy photos. And this is probably one that they might not have seen, and it is incredible. We have that one awesome. Up? Okay.
Yeah, so this is another special image that's near and dear to my heart. This is NGC 1365. It's the Great Barred Spiral Galaxy in the southern constellation of Fornax. And it's actually part of the Fornax Galaxy cluster. You can kind of see a couple of them up in the top left-hand corner.
There's a ton of galaxies in there. There's a ton of galaxies in there.
Huge cluster. So like you mentioned, this was actually taken from a 17-inch CDK telescope down in the Southern Hemisphere. That's awesome. This was one of my first images to come out of the Southern Hemisphere. And as it turned out, when I submitted it to the Insight Astrophotographer of the Year competition, this one and then the one right behind me, right over here, the Boogeyman Nebula, were both selected that year as one of the top images of the year. And so it was hanging in the Royal Greenwich Museum in London for a year, right when COVID struck. I was going to go see it, but then COVID happened and I didn't get to see it before they took it down. But yeah, it's a big, beautiful spiral galaxy that just completely face on. You can see the great central bar, and there's just so much happening in this area.
Okay. Chuck and Ross, in order to show the images and keep them on the screen, you're going to have to keep talking. It's just the way the Zoom is.
Oh, working. Sure.
Yeah. So you guys say something, then the people watching this are going, "I want to see it again." So we had a request to see the mineral moon image a little bit later. If you guys could show that again, and please show the galaxy image.
Awesome. We will do that, and we will run back through all the images later in the show because we weren't able to get quite as many. I've got my computer processing a bunch of images for you guys, and I'll tell you about that. I took them with this scope actually right here, but yeah, we'll tell you about those in a second.
Oh, 1 second. With that scope in the Southern Hemisphere, is that someone you know, or is it like is it one of those websites where you're able to use their telescopes and they pretty much send you the data? How'd that come about?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. The telescope that I'm currently using is a friend of mine named Greg Turgeon, who also has an agreement with Deep Sky West. So you can subscribe to his telescope for a fee a month, and then you actually get all the data that comes off the telescope, regardless of whether or not you selected that image or that object through their request portal. But Greg and I have been friends for a while now, and because I have a plane wave in the northern hemisphere, he has a plane wave in the southern hemisphere, we just share data between the two of us. That way we have access to the entire night sky. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, as much of an addict as I am, it's great to be able to have, full range across the entire, both hemispheres and get all the objects that you want to shoot.
Fascinating. Yes, it's.
I didn't get to ask, but when did y'all get into? I forgot. How long have y'all both been into astrophotography? Or when did you start shooting?
Guillermo, you can start. You
go
first.
for it.
Yeah, I was already starting.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's about 5 years now. So
5 years.
So,
Casey, what about you?
I have been shooting for 7 years now. So I started in 2014 after I put my iPhone up to the eyepiece on a C8 and took a picture of the moon, and I kind of dove into the rabbit hole from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very deep rabbit hole, Casey.
Yes.
Well, hey, Guillermo and Casey, I've got a little surprise for you guys. Because this was a last minute deal, and I talked to you all yesterday, and you guys agreed to be on the show, and then we bumped it up, and you guys really have stepped up to the plate, not only in your educational outreach and your continual progress climbing the learning curve that Casey made a joke with me on Astrobin a while ago about, but you guys have really done a great job for our community. And so the surprise I've got for you guys is I just purchased a month's use for our 165 FPL 53 camera to access from Wilderness, Virginia. So I think that is it's got to be an awesome place. I've never been there. But I've got a month on this, and I really want to see what you guys can do with it. And I want to see what our audience can do with it too. So I'm going to send you guys an email after this show, and then maybe, in a couple weeks, we can share with the audience what you guys got.
Yeah, just whenever y'all have time.
With this remote telescope. And so anybody watching, if they think, I would really love to have access to these fantastic telescopes and maybe in 7 years get a picture that somewhat resembles Casey's or Guillermo's, then this is the way to do it. Check out our website. We've got the 165 millimeter, our biggest, most incredible scope, and it's ready for you to use. So Casey, Guillermo, can't wait to continue our relationship. Thank you so much for boarding the mothership with us here on Explore Scientific, Focus on Astrophotography, guys. Very grateful for you all.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. Thank you.
And thank you guys for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Casey. Well, guys, I think that was pretty awesome. We just continue to have incredible guests.
Yeah.
And the show wouldn't be what it is without our guests and without all these awesome pictures you guys get to see. So hopefully while I'm talking, you guys don't have to look at me. We can continue to show these incredible photos of the moon and what have you. So we're gonna, is Cameron on? I don't know. We can't see anything. Is Cameron on with us today?
No, okay. Cameron could not be on today.
Okay, well,
with the schedule change, he had a work conflict.
Well, we we do have a photo we will show. We'll wait till next week then, but we've got the before and after of that picture you guys saw last week of him getting the noise out of the photo. And so I think you'll all be really impressed. Oh, and I forgot. I was going to ask Casey to tell us one secret trick about Pix Insight. But I'm going to have to tell you next week because I'm going to have to ask him again. So stay tuned. But, oh, Casey, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, awesome. Well, please tell us how you get that dust, that dark nebulas, those LDNs, my favorite things in the sky. How do you bring them out?
Sure. So again, a quick PixInsight tip. One of the ways that you can really start to bring out those dark, dusty nebulas is to use a process called arc sign stretch rather than your normal histogram, because the arc sign stretch actually keeps the highlights of the image suppressed to some extent while really bringing out those mid and low tones where all that dark dust is hiding. And an added benefit of that is it also makes the colors in the stars much more vibrant because you're not seeing an overall bright intensity in the image. So it's a fantastic process that not a lot of people use, and I highly recommend trying it out. And I actually use it in combination with histogram stretch to kind of finish it off. But it's great for those dusty nebulas.
Well, yeah, I was just so pleased when I asked you, and you said something that I had never even heard of, and I've had PixInsight for a year now, and so it is awesome. And thank you so much for educating us. That is super cool. So yeah, we're gonna do a shout out segment. We've only got one, but you know this guy he's right up there at the top too, and I call him the GM of astrophotography, Gary M. Now, IMM is his last name. Google him, Gary M. Astrobin. I would call him the most prolific astrophotographer on the earth today, and just an incredible guy down in Texas. And I am really hoping we get him on the show because he's a very cool guy too. But you know, I think it's time for everybody's favorite part. What part is that? What part is that, Chuck?
It's Chuck's Constellation Crunch.
There it goes.
So yeah, today's Constellation Crunch is going to go on Cepheus. This is my favorite constellation as well. It is in the northern sky and named after the king of Ethiopia in Greek mythology, Cepheus.
And we did this, you might remember we did this last week, but Cepheus is so strong, and I was trying to crunch it, and we did not have time to get it crunched. So there's so much more left in there for us to talk about.
Yeah, so I'll touch on a couple things real fast, but yeah, he was married to Cassiopeia and was father of Andromeda, both of whom are immortalized as modern-day constellations along with Cepheus. Okay.
We can talk about flat panels. Well, yeah.
Yeah, let me finish this real fast.
Sure.
The brightest star in Cepheus is Alpha Cephi with a apparent magnitude of 2.5. Another cool fact about Cepheus is it hosts an ultramassive black hole at its core, is reported 40 billion solar masses, about 10 times more massive than the central black hole of the Milky Way, making it among one of the most black holes that we currently know of in the universe. Basically, Cepheus sticks out to me. It's just there's so many different objects in it. We actually have a map of it. But I mean, some of my favorite nebulas are in there, like the Cave Nebula, the Bubble, the Elephant Trunk. What's some? I know there's one more I'm missing.
Well, there is the new one. It's called the Squid Nebula.
Yeah.
And this guy was discovered in 2012. Just a straight, beautiful oxygen emission wrapped around, I think it's called the Lobster Nebula, and that's in H alpha. But there is so much. There is so much in Cepheus, and I've tried to image the cave. That's a very hard one. The one you saw of Casey, that Casey took, that's a very hard one. That would not be my first nebula to go to. But the Bubble, you can pick up some incredible detail on this shell of the Bubble, and I think that is a great one as an early target to try to really test your skills, test your processing, test the alignment of your mount. A lot of the times when you're straight pointing at the north or close to Polaris, the star's movement is not as much, so you are able to get longer exposures than you would be, say, if you were closer to the southern hemisphere.
And then also another cool one, there's a planetary nebula in there of NGC 7354. It's got that blue gases coming off it, kind of like the Crescent Nebula. But But also another cool fact about Cepheus in popular culture, if y'all remember Third Rock from the Sun, that show that was on Fox in the 90s, their home planet is a spiral galaxy in Cepheus Draco border. So I thought that was pretty neat.
That is pretty cool. That was a fun show. What was that one? I had brought you that one. Oh, the Lion.
Yeah.
The Lion is another very, very faint emission nebula in Cepheus that is remarkable in the three different wavelengths: the hydrogen, the sulfur, and the oxygen. Beautiful separation of the colors.
And
but
also,
that's a lot. You need a lot of time on that one.
Yeah, and also
20 hours.
If you're just getting into astrophotography, but you want something a little bit more challenging, the bubble nebula is actually pretty easy to shoot. It's not hard.
You'll get it. Yeah,
it's not hard at all to bring that bubble out. That was my first like intermediate target to go after. I didn't have my other laptop with me, so I didn't have the data so I could show an image of it. But I've actually imaged all of these. I really want to shoot the Cave Nebula again because my first go at it, I got all the detail out and everything, just my stars. My stars just weren't that great. They were around, but I clipped my data, so my stars like looked all turquoise and that bluish green color. But yeah, that's definitely one that I'm gonna go back after.
Oh, so on flat panels, Jim, are you talking about, because I have the Pegasus Flat Master, and that works great.
It also depends, like if
I like them, they're much easier than sure. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, I use a light panel. I mean, there's so many different methods to it. If you're trying to figure out how long you need to shoot for, ASI 294, I know with that camera, the sweet spot's 3 seconds.
What was the program you were telling me about yesterday? That
Astrophotography tool has a program in there that will it'll read your histogram for you and let you know how fast you need to. It shoots your light panels for you basically, and it's not always correct because I mean it can be a preference, and also I mean it depends on the image that you're shooting, also camera. But I've always, even if I know like how long to shoot my flats for, I still go to it to get another recommendation from it. But also depending on the camera, I would just type the camera in to cloudy nights and you can find all sorts of information on it, just because every camera is different. So you really have to experience with it. I know on most of the CMOS cameras, the ADU, you want to be around 2,500 on it, or 25,000. Is it 25,000, 2,500?
Well, I'll get in.
Okay.
I'll get into some of those specifics in a second. But keep going.
But yeah, the way I do it is I use one T-shirt, I rubber band it around my dew shield, and then on my light panel, I bring it down to the lowest setting, and I actually put 2 to 3 sheets of white paper.
So you
on that
use a
panel.
shirt with the
Okay, so the sheet of paper is also, so sometimes light panels can be uneven illuminated,
right?
So the paper brings down the brightness, but it also makes it more even. Okay. Apparently, that's what, if you go to cloudy nights and look at, there's a couple guys that do that. Again, that's for the 294. The other camera I shoot with is the ASI 533 MC Pro, completely different flats. I don't know I can get you the exact time if you want to email me, chuck@explorescientific.com. But I know on the 533, if you're shooting narrowband, I've never needed flat frames. But if I'm shooting, broadband, I'm going to take flats with that 533, but I know it's under 1 second. So it really just depends on the camera.
Most of the time, the flats are pretty fast.
And obviously you want your histogram to be to the middle, to the left, or left middle.
Left middle, yeah.
So
I have struggled with flats and my ATIC Horizon. And I did not have that issue with the QHY600 monochrome that I've gotten recently. I have heard color cameras are a little more difficult to get good flats with, and I have certainly experienced that. But I've done it well a few times, A few times I've gotten them, and I really enjoy the flat panel. I think I just couldn't do it any other way.
But also, you got to shoot them and then process them because
You don't know.
Yeah, you really don't know. You might be looking at the history and be like, wow, this is perfect. The color looks great. The shadows look great. And then you process your image and it looks terrible. So
that's why we don't have an image to share with you today that I took with this guy, because the flats I took, I thought they were good.
Yeah.
Thought they were good, but they introduced artifacts instead of taking them away.
And I'll be the first one to tell you, I hate calibration frames. That's why I shoot a lot with the 533 because, I mean, really, well, I've been shooting narrowband, but if you're shooting narrowband with most color cameras, not the 294, obviously, but really all you need is darks and a bunch of light frames. But yeah, I'll be the first one to tell you, I hate taking flats and dark flats and bias frames.
It is incredibly difficult mentally, physically, all the things.
But you got to have
3:30 in the morning to take a flat, because you do kind of need to take them in the moment. So another grain of dust doesn't get introduced. Your camera, say you're pointing at this direction in the sky, but then you move it back to the home position. Well, something could have moved on your sensor. You need to do it in the moment if you want the good flats, and then you got to figure out the time with obviously APT, and go about that way. So
just over and if you use the astrophotography tool, I know there's a free trial, but also if you go to the tool section, it'll just be Flats Aid or CCD Flats Aid, and that's the program you use to get the right time and ADU for your flats. Yeah, Guillermo, you have something to say?
Oh yeah, you guys jump in.
Yeah, I know y'all are the experts.
Yeah, trust me.
I was going to mention there's another program similar to APT called Sequence Generator Pro. That has a flats wizard built into it as well, so you can set it up with your light source and it'll go through and test all your filters. And like you guys mentioned, it's between 25 and 30,000 ADU for CMOS or CCD. And then it actually plugs that into your sequence for you, and you can actually have your telescope shoot that right at the end. So if you have like a flip flat or the Pegasus flat panel associated with it, it'll actually do it for you automatically while you sleep. So that's always nice.
Are you shooting through there also? Is that where you do all your imaging from Sequence Generator Pro?
Yeah, that's pretty much the only program that I use now. Unless it's DSLR, then I'll use Backyard EOS.
Yeah. And also, I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
That's when I was using DSLR, I was also using Backyard EOS, and now I'm using SGP. And when taking flats, another aspect that I have realized is not, at least with 1600, is that it matters not only this 25,000 magnitude, but also to target a minimum amount of duration of exposure. If you go too short, then the CMOS sensor doesn't calibrate out well, or at least with my camera or my experience. So I need to go at least to a tenth of a second minimum exposure. Anything shorter than that, the calibration is not good. Even if the flats look good, then they don't calibrate out things. So I basically combine both things. So with my light panel, sometimes what I do is to actually underpower it to below the minimum voltage to go to very, very dim light, and to as you say, put in something in between to lighter the light, to go lower with the light. So that's because it gets very easy with these sensitive cameras to go too high, or you need very short exposures. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, are you just what light panel are you using, Guillermo? Is it one from an Astro company? Or is it just one of those sketch light panels?
I think it's a sketch. I mean, it's not dedicated to specific astrophotography light panel. It's one for the sketching things. I tried a couple of them, and I found out one that works well. At least my feeling is that it works well. You never know, but
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with it, with the results.
Awesome.
And it was much cheaper, of course, than specific.
Awesome. Well, yeah, these guys know a lot better than us, and so the audience, that's why we have the guest on for you. And so we really appreciate that. So, okay, we got a new segment that we're going to give a try to today. And, you know, we are Explore Scientific, and what I've noticed is we got a bunch of scientists here, and we got a bunch of explorers here, and, you know, a few people right there at the top, they really are exploring scientifically, and that's what we want to do. And you asked me about the 25,000 ADUs, and I couldn't answer that question because, you know, I am definitely on the explorer side, and but thankfully, Kent, he was driving that mothership the other day, and we got to go out in the parking lot and look at the sun. And so this is a story from the new segment, Tales from the Explorers. And so we go outside in the parking lot and we want to look at the sun. And we set the mount down, we point it kind of at north, and we tell the mount to go look at the sun. And then Kent proceeds to polar align the mount with shadows. And so he took that mothership and he flew us all the way back to Stonehenge, and we were looking at that sundial, and we were moving and making adjustments based on the shadows. And Kent just did an episode where he talked about that. So if you guys do a little searching, you can figure out how to do that yourself. It is fascinating. I mean, because I really had no idea that you can polar align a mount with a shadow.
No, it was definitely old school versus new. So Tyler Bowman, he's on the show here and there. He's actually our boss. But he comes out, like Ross said, computer go-to find the sun. He's using the toggle through the Explorers app to find the sun. And we find it pretty quick. But Kent comes out there because we actually moved the target because we were testing eyepieces. But Kent comes out there and we're off. We're not on the sun. But he nails the sun by going off the tripod shadow. Which is pretty, mind blown. But it just goes to show you that the go-to was working properly. Just it was,
our polar alignment was off.
Yeah, our polar alignment was off, and he nailed it from a shadow. So that's pretty cool.
And that is what you'll find most of the time. If you're having a problem in astrophotography, it's your fault. It is human error most of the time.
Yeah, and one thing was the cone error. That's something I had no clue about before I started here was cone error and how much that can actually affect, your polar alignment.
And we should probably talk about that on the next episode before we just completely blow everyone's minds.
Yeah.
Because cone error, you probably have not even...
Basically, cone error is the telescope's not lined up. If anybody... There's Allen screws right there, and basically you adjust it by the one on the left and the one on the right, so your telescope's perfectly aligned.
Like you would align your telescope with the guide scope, you need your telescope aligned with your polar finder scope. And I just kind of figured that, you put the polar finder scope in the mount and, you should be aligned. But that is not the case. And... Kent knows all about that too, and he could probably do it with the shadows from the sun as well, maybe.
Yeah.
And
I was going to cover this real fast if you didn't mind.
We're going. We are
go
almost there because at the end we do have something really cool to tell you guys.
Good deal.
We do have something really cool, and this is a short history of a long journey, so we're not going to be able to tell you everything that's happened in astrophotography. But I like stories, and I've got a really fun story about Hans and Margaret and the legend of Curious George. And I was pretty curious about this legend. And did you know that Curious George, has a connection with the stars? And so Hans and Margaret, they got married in Rio de Janeiro, and they went on their honeymoon to France. and they just stayed there. It's a pretty cool place. They liked it. They were artists. And as we know, France and Paris is a great spot for artists. And so they stayed there. And this was, right around the 1940s. And the bombs started falling. And, they waited and they waited. And they almost waited too long. There were no bikes, no cars, nothing for Hans and Margaret, his wife, to get out and to escape the Nazis. And he put it together. He built from scrap parts he could find laying around. He built, him and his wife, a bicycle to get out of there and to escape the Nazis. And he rode and he rode, and they rode 300 miles to get to Portugal, to get on a boat and get to New York, and to give us Curious George. And, my boy is really glad they did that. But how they have a connection to astrophotography and astronomy in general is they wrote a book, and many of astronomy books, they're good for 10 years, 20 years, and then technology has surpassed, things have changed, we know more, and the book is good. It's just kind of more of a history lesson. But not so much with Hans and Margaret's book. You should look it up. Google this, The Stars, A New Way to See Them. It's now on my reading list, and I have ordered one. I am waiting for it to come in the mail because it does sound incredible. The Stars, A New Way to See Them, from the people who brought you Curious George because they escaped the Nazis. And, the stars, looking at them a new way, that's what we do here in astrophotography. Isn't that really what we're doing? Our cameras now, we've got 90% quantum ratios. We've got calibration photos to get the noise out. We're using 3 nanometer. Well, I'm not because I can't afford it yet. But some of us are using 3 nanometer filters. And we're putting these pictures together with the Hubble palette and with all these colors because astrophotographers, we get to paint the picture. And most people who are not in astronomy, who have never taken a picture or looked up there, they don't even realize, and I sure didn't, the Hubble palette, that's not the colors. Hydrogen and sulfur and oxygen are the 3 wavelengths of light. And it just so happens that hydrogen and sulfur are both in the red wavelength. And so we cannot distinguish that. And so to bring out the details, they create the Hubble palette, and they put hydrogen as the green color and sulfur as the red. So you should know that the Hubble palette is not what you would see if you could see that. We are creating the art, and as we have said before, astrophotography is the combination of art and science. And that's why, it is Explore Scientific, exploring art and scientific. We are the combination here, and we've got us all here, the explorers and the scientists, from Jerry Hubble, Kent, and our boss Scott, and to Chuck and I. And I think it's pretty obvious by now which side Chuck and I fall on. But yeah, so let's move on. Well, tell us again, do you remember that one guy that took that first photo you said from the first show with that camera we brought up? We were just trying to, give our shout outs to the history of the photographers, but Messier then. The Messier catalog. It is just phenomenal now that we've got this catalog created in the late 1700s. Remember a guy using enormous telescopes that now we can see an image in ways he couldn't, and in ways, even Edwin Hubble himself couldn't see these objects. And so that's why I brought up Gary IMM, because he will show you his pictures with a 12-inch scope right next to the Palomar photos that Dr. Arp took. And Dr. Arp was certainly a combination of explorer scientist. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the technology, you guys can get things that all the greatest the people of astronomy didn't get to see. We are so lucky, and we want you on board the mothership with us. And so that is kind of why we've got this new thing that we're going to try, see how it goes. And but first, Chuck, talk about this, because
I'll bring back into the cameras and technology and everything. But so when I was I'm sorry, I was taking your phone. When I was getting started in astrophotography, I actually I started off with the Williams Optics Z61 and just a DSLR camera. And I thought that I really was clueless, didn't know anything about, field of view and arc seconds per pixels and all that good stuff. But I had aperture fever. I thought I needed the biggest telescope to get the best images, and surely I was definitely wrong on that. But this scope right here in front of me was my first scope.
Mine too.
When I decided I wanted to get, serious in astrophotography, and this is the ED-102. It's got the FCD1 glass in it, great glass, brings out a lot of detail. You don't have any of that purple fringing or anything like that. And an awesome rack and pin 2-inch focuser on the back. But the reason I recommend this scope is basically you can put a reducer in here and make it a lot faster. You can actually get it down to f5 with a 0.79 reducer flattener in there. But just let's say you're just using a field flattener, it can pretty much, with a big sensor, frame anything in the night sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have mine, still use it. It's light.
This is the all-around model.
Yeah.
Galaxies, nebula, this gets them both.
Yeah, exactly.
And to my satisfaction,
the focal
sure.
the focal length is 714, which is, I think, a sweet spot in astrophotography. And like I said, you can always get a reducer. You could get a reducer from Star Arizona and drop it down to like 400 focal length. But again, my biggest thing was I thought I had to have these big scopes to make beautiful images. But now with cameras, you leave that sensor open, and all you're doing is collecting photons to bring out all that faint detail in nebula and galaxies. I just find it so crazy that there's people out there getting, in my opinion, some of them better than Hubble quality photos from their backyard. Just with, narrowband imaging, it's blocking out all the wavelength except for that the gas is coming off that object. It's just crazy. And it's just wild to think that, you can start this out as a hobby and it can learn and, it can grow into a career. But
and that's what it's done for us.
Yeah, I owe a lot to this telescope right here. And like
sir.
I said, if you're not
sir.
doing astrophotography and you just want a good scope with great views, round stars, I would definitely go with the 102. It's just so versatile.
Yeah, so versatile.
There's people in cloudy nights that call the Explore Scientific scopes the Rodney Dangerfield of telescope, which is awesome because a lot of people customize it. And it's just a very, I don't know. I've never had a problem with these scopes. They last. They're tough.
Well, it sure needs some respect, I think. And I am so glad you brought up field of view and people wanting. I got a call the other day, and a guy was saying, what is your scope with the highest magnification? And will your scope get 400 times magnification? And I said, well, man, we're probably going to have a little bit of a conversation here.
Yeah, we're not finding exoplanets out here.
And, because people don't realize that many of these nebulas are bigger than a full moon. And you don't want to be zoomed in. Unless you're studying double stars. And, they're
light years and light years and light years wide. So.
This is a tip and an incredibly fun tool that I wanted to share with you guys today. And I was going to forget until Chuck brought it back. But astronomy tools, field of view calculator. You plug in your scope, you plug in your camera or your eyepiece, and then whatever it is you want to look at, whether it's Andromeda or anything, any NGC object, anything you have in mind, it will show you how that object will appear with your telescope, camera, and the eyepiece. And so it's quite fun when someone wants 300 times magnification. And so you take them to that field of view calculator and you show them how much of Andromeda they'll get to see. And so that is just, it's Astronomy Tools Field of View Calculator. Google that. It's incredibly fun to just plug stuff in and get an idea, especially if you're in the market to purchase a scope. And you might think, you know, this scope is too small. You know, I drive a car. I don't even have a truck. I at least have to have a big telescope, right? Well, no, you don't. Not if you want fantastic pictures, because that magnification is just going to increase your difficulty level. And if it's your first time, you know, using it, really a telescope, you have just made your job immensely more difficult.
And a lot of people actually get into astrophotography so they can get closer up on what they're trying to see and get more detail out of it. Because like I said, I mean, that's what a camera does. It's just collecting photons, which is, you know, light. So that's part of the reason why I got into it, because I love looking through a telescope, but also my mom's an artist. She's a painter, and I've got that side of my brain that likes to create, and I like art. So it's just crazy. You can have a tiny telescope and a camera, and you can pull out so much detail out of the night sky. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, Chuck, should we, I mean, we're getting ready to close it up, so should we give them the big news?
Yeah, come on, hit them with it.
All right, well, so as you know, Chuck and we're getting there on astrophotography. We're climbing up that learning curve, and we hope to do it with you. So we have organized this show based, you know, for inspiration, for a little bit of education here and there, and you know, for everybody to board the mothership together. And I actually did, in fact, this is not the big news. It might be next show, fingers crossed, but I did, in fact, email George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic, and
Nice.
I told him, my boss will think I am the coolest dude in the world if you let me use your song for the intro. So fingers crossed, George Clinton, please email us back. But the big news that I think everyone's going to be really excited about is Chuck and we're going to start examining and inspecting some of these scopes that we have here at Explore Scientific that, you know, might have a ding here and there, might be cosmetically not perfect.
But mechanically and optically, they will be perfect. And also, we're going to be testing them also.
Yes.
But yeah, bring them through the inspection.
Sure. So, you know, we'll run through the inspection. We're going to have pictures of any blemish that the scope might have. We're going to do some fun tests. We've got a string that we put weights on the bottom to show you how strong these focusers are of the model that you're going to get. And then we're going to tell you the things we like about it, the things we, you know, don't really like about it. And then we're going to show you a picture that we took with it. So you know what you're getting when you get a Chuck or Ferg certified pre-owned from Explore Scientific. You're going to know what you're getting. So next week, we might have something for you, and you guys will be the first to find out. So that's why you got to watch the show. And thank you, because it brought back to my mind another reason why you need to follow Chuck here on Instagram, Day and Night Photography, because, you know, you never know when Chuck or I or somebody here might accidentally post a picture of something that we shouldn't. Something secret, something incredible that we've got a team of engineers working on. And, you know, if you're following Chuck and you got the alerts, you might get to see something, because a lot of, you know, people might not know that all this, all the design is done right here. We are like the Apple of telescopes. I mean, all of the creativity, all of the technical aspects comes in. We got these 3D printers running off the hook for you guys. And if you follow Chuck, he might accidentally post some picture of something incredible that we might have available. I don't know.
Yeah.
We
Also,
might have, I don't know.
Going back to the CPOs, I'm probably gonna make a video on how we do that. So these scopes that we're certifying that are pre-owned, it's parts of different scopes. So, you know, let's say you buy a telescope and it has a scratched objective lens. Well, you know, we're going to give you a brand new scope, but we're going to take that objective lens off, replace it with a good one, and now we have a brand new scope. But I'm actually going to show you the process of how we do that, how we go in and clean them, collimate them, test the focuser, make sure mechanically, optically they're sound. But like Ross said, we're each going to be doing images from these telescopes, so definitely check us out on that.
Yeah, I actually here. Let me grab this one for you. I got another good story before we go.
The process of it is very interesting. When I started working here, I was like a kid at Disney World, just seeing how everything's done. And this is the big boy. This is the 127 CF, right?
Right. And this big boy here, you can't see it, but this is serial number 1. The first carbon fiber 127 ever produced. And the other night, I got to go take pictures with it. And, you know, unfortunately for you guys, this one won't be for sale. This one's going to go up on the wall because it is so incredible. But I will share the picture whenever my computer gets done processing it. And but that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be getting scopes like this for you. We're going to be testing them. We're going to show you our tests.
Also recommend the cameras that will be used on them will be running 1 to 2 arc second per pixel. So we can also recommend the cameras on it, or at least show you that what we're using to image with them.
And yeah, so this one, I took a fantastic photo with this on Tuesday night, I believe. And you know, I was thinking, man, we need to do a CPO for this guy, but you know, this is the first telescope that I certified and put it together myself, and so I had to buy it, and it's mine now. But you know, we're going to talk about difference in dew shields. This is a very retro, cool dew shield, and you're just going to have fun with us. And we're going to get some great scopes, and we're going to show you how great they are because we're taking photos with them. So stay tuned. We're always going to bring new stuff to you, and yeah, if you guys want, you remember I told the audience that we got that month subscription on the 165. What do you say? First person to email Chuck or I, say they want a night with that telescope. You got it.
And also one other thing, I forgot to mention, we do have another astrophotography contest going on right now. It's on galaxies, so that is going to be the window is getting very shorter because, like I said, Earth is actually, you know, we're starting to face the Milky Way. But
where do they send those? Where do they submit?
So you can send it at chuck@explorescientific.com or ross@explorescientific.com or tyler@explorescientific.com.
If you know our names, you know our email.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not sure when it ends. But like I said, if you've got pictures of the galaxies, please send them to us. So, and again, you know, we'll put you in the contest and win some cool stuff. So
yeah, and like I said, first one to email Chuck or I and say they want a night with that telescope. The date's on us. We'll pay for dinner. So thank you all so much for viewing.
Posted the
yes, and let's
the link for
let's take it over to the big man.
Okay. All right. Well, great show, guys. Thank you very much. And Guillermo, thank you very much for coming on to our program. And we look forward to seeing more astrophotography from all of you. So until that time, you guys keep looking up. We'll be back on Monday with Dr. Daniel Barth on, you know, how do you know? And don't forget about the Tuesday night's Global Star Party featuring special guest host Caitlin Ahrens. Until later, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Very, very good.
Yeah,
Very,
we
very
just gotta
good.
do something about the volume and being able to see each other.
Hey, every show has gotten better, man. Every show, we're feeling it.
Guys. So,
Bye, Guillermo.
very good
Thank
show.
you.
Good show. Bye. See you.
Thank you, sir. Hey, we're looking for your picture tonight, buddy.
Yeah.
You did a great job. You were so good, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Guillermo.